Awesome. I would like to call to order the school committee special meeting budget workshop, February 28th, 2024. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag is behind Jonathan. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. If we could just bow our heads for a moment of reflection, think about those that are less fortunate than us. I thank you. As we did with last meeting, I did make a chair statement as to the purpose of this meeting. So I will, so nice, we'll say the same thing twice. Our purpose of this collaboration as a committee is to ensure we continue to provide the services and resources necessary to maintain and improve upon the educational outcomes of our students and opportunities of our students and stakeholders. We are also responsible to the stakeholders of Little Compton to act in a financially thoughtful and responsible manner. And I attended the budget committee meeting last night. And I'm sure you've had some sort of contact with them, unless Bob Mushin is a mind reader and he put us in, we're right in the wheelhouse of where their expectations are. I think we come in a little below, that could vary. But it seems like it was the weight of the room was very positive. So I thank you for your efforts, John. I know that you do quite a bit for the town of Lincoln. You do a great deal for the town of Little Compton. So we appreciate you. Thank you. And without further ado, we will turn it over. Is there any public input? Mr. Mark, would you like to do any? Jonathan, anyone? All right, perfect. Thank you for all being here in attendance tonight. We will now turn the portion of the meeting over to the presentation for the school budget for Lori, John, and Jonathan to do as they did on the 14th.
Not as long as the 14th. That was in-depth version.
Well, I should first, before you do start, I know we asked, were questions sent? Did folks have questions too?
I think
Jennifer or John, that's fine, as long as we're going to be addressing those.
Members of the committee too.
two members of the committee.
Okay.
Let's change the date on this. Apologies.
Noted.
All right, I had to add a slide since a few weeks ago. And this was up, the 5 stars. And we all know that that is not an easy distinction to get in the state. The accountability metric is kind of stacked against a lot of schools, to tell you the truth. And so we are not there ever. But here is the new one. And so we received this letter last week. It was addressed to Principal McKinnon and as the head of the school. And it's a letter and statement of acceptance of the middle years program. Dear John McKinnon, I am pleased to inform you that the International Baccalaureate Organization, IB, has approved your school for authorization to offer the middle years program. There are several steps which must now be taken in order to complete the authorization process. So here we are, and we're doing a lot of paperwork, and we're signing documents regarding branding and how to use their branding and all that fun stuff. And so, as everything that comes from IB, it comes at 2 or 3 in the morning because they're in The Hague in the Netherlands. And so last week we sort of had a good sense. And so some of us are early risers anyway. So we were pretty stoked when it did come in. And it's been a long journey.
Congratulations. Well, this is perfect.
Yes,
Yeah, it was well timed, by the way. I mean, I don't know if you guys rehearsed that, but that was very well done.
We did not plan that. So we could subtract 2 years with that pandemic chaos. And we did this, I would say, in 3 years. It's usually 3 to 5 or 6. So very, very proud of this staff.
Yes.
And I also wrote this to Fiona in The Hague. That's difficult in a small school because we can't divide and conquer. Our teachers are singletons, generally speaking. And so our 7th and 8th grade math teacher cannot say to her colleagues in the math department, because there isn't one, hey, let's divide and conquer these rubrics. Let's divide and conquer these unit plans and the lesson plans within. And so our teachers had a huge hill to climb. So it's that there's power in, in numbers, and there's a lot of work when we have a small number of staff members, extras. So we could not be happier. 8% of the state schools are 5-star, and we're in that 8%. And not one public school in the state that has an IB program. So we are the only public school in the state of Rhode Island. And the other 2 schools are Prout and St. Andrews.
That's what it is, St. Andrews. I always remember Prout.
This is huge, the heaviest lift of Jack's career, my career, and could not have done it without the staff. And they were led by their coordinator, Amy Watts. I want to give her another round of applause.
Yeah.
Kids will benefit from this. Living and growing up in a beautiful community like this is absolutely adds value to everyone's lives. However, it doesn't always prepare you for life beyond these beautiful borders. And so having that global context, that international framework that was designed for the students and kids of diplomatic corps, high-ranking brass in the military, so that there would be a rigorous preparation of high school kids, no matter where their parents were deployed in the world, so that they could have access to top Ivy League schools, 2nd tier, 3rd tier, top state universities and their programs. Now that it has been sort of scaled out everywhere, that kind of rigor that you see in an IB program translates into the higher student achievement that we're seeing in our public school. And when I was down in FLIBS, only IB people know what that is, in Florida, they did say being on that IB journey definitely increases the rigor and definitely will increase student output when it comes to achievement. And so hopefully more public schools follow that very extraordinarily impactful framework. And our kids are the first public school kids in the state to be there. So it's an incredible framework, and this community is part of it. Whoops, all right. Obviously, we know that our aggregate district data, we took the #1 spot in the state for ELA and for science, #6 spot for math, and that's about over 60 LEAs, districts, and standalone charter schools, and that's not a bad deal. This is a community that should be very proud of this school. So we have 3 slides: 5 stars, the International Baccalaureate Middle Years Program, the most elite distinction you can achieve in the world for an educational enterprise. And on the state level, look what we have here. Data points of the envy of many communities. And I've been asked to speak a few times on our great student achievement, deep teaching and active learning in Compton that has brought us to this moment in history. This town has the best school in the state. We also have, and this is kind of a tricky thing to show, and Jonathan did say this was kind of confusing, but so our aggregate data is top in #6. But our disaggregated data also is pretty darn good. Out of about 172 elementary schools that have a 3rd grade, we're #1 in the state for ELA. Same thing with grade 4. Same thing used to be math, ELA. So we have 11 out of our 13 data points are in the top 10 in this state. And most of them are top 1, 2, or 3. I mean, this is huge. I've been in this profession a long time. I've worked in several different school districts. No matter how big or how small, there is no enterprise that is easy to move towards excellence. Many good schools, many very good schools, very few that are great. This is one of them. And this is just the usual, growth and all that good stuff. And so when our students show growth over time, that enters into that metric for those 5 stars. So schools must meet that. Every student must succeed. It is a federal law and a statutory, imperative that equity of access to the curriculum is guaranteed. And if we're not, moving our kids continuously along that efficiency continuum, then we're not doing our job. So we are moving our kids in ELA, math and science, and they're exhibiting growth from year to year. Our kids are not stagnating. That does happen sometimes. But our classes, our class sizes are optimal, our kids are known, and they can differentiate the instruction, the teachers, the specialists, etc. And so we just look at that growth and we are exceeding every single data point that we have in the past, or maybe I would say the past 3 years, we have been on a trajectory towards excellence. And so 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, kind of stagnant. And it was RICAS was the 3rd state assessment, summative assessment in 3 years at one point. There was NECAP and then PARC and then RICAS. So things did stagnate as we all learned how to teach to these learning standards. And so here we are. Our teachers have definitely knocked it out. Same thing in math, same thing in science. And this is how you look at growth, or the average scale score, 58, 60, 63 over 3 years. And every now and then you get a little dip, 496, 501 to 503, there's our growth. 505, little dip, nice big boost. So that's what we look at. We want to make sure our kids are moving. Oops. And then I had to add a few things here. Not only do we have a focus on academics, top district data in the state, IDMYP, 5 stars, and it's been extraordinary faculty and staff. I lay a lot of the success of this school the past few years. Jackie can see. Absolutely. He is one of the best principals in the state. And it is humbling working with him. He loves children. He respects teachers. He has high expectations for all. And he gives us what everyone needs. There's a reason why we have those first 3 slides. He supports families in getting their kids to school on time and ready to learn. And he supports his staff. I'm sure they would all agree if they were here. So we have all those wonderful academic components in place. We've added Toddle, which is an incredible digital plan book that also has an IB component. But we also have a lot of social emotional supports. There's been an uptick in diagnosed anxiety, depression, etc. among young people. There's been an uptick in the stress level of individual teachers and entire schools of professionals. And so social emotional components that kind of wraparound service is needed now more than ever. So we have, in that realm, a dedicated faculty and staff and engaged families. Our families are incredible. When we send out parent square messaging, there is a feature where parents can appreciate or write us a note. And our parents, not always the ones that you would see at meetings or online or anything like that, they are very forthcoming with their appreciation. And sometimes with their constructive criticism. And so we have an engaged set of families here at Wilbur McMahon School. We also have strong, used to be called RTI, response to intervention. Now it's multi-tiered support. RIDE is always giving us new initialisms. And ETM, which is the evaluation team meeting process, the IEP process. And with Mr. Dufresne, we have homegrown programming here, hit the ground running. Teachers are very forthcoming, parents are very forthcoming in this town, as they should be. And I'm hearing nothing but great things about your office. You deserve so much praise, accolades, and I'm just happy. I'm learning from you. It's a new department for me to oversee as a superintendent. I was a little bit out of my depth. Thank you for that. We still have the year-round wraparound student services going on in the summer. So this will be the 7th summer, I believe, or 6th, that Mary Elizabeth Miller reaches out. The grant does run out for our guidance counselor to do the same, because I've written that into ESSER 2 and 3. Mary Elizabeth Miller is part of the workflow. She does work every summer. She meets kids at risk. She catches them before they fall. She'll have a little book group for kids that she's identified as some support. She's just an absolute gift, a treasure as a clinician, and as is our guidance counselor, Cara Julia. There are weekly meetings to discuss student progress. Our kids are done. Our groups are small. We have a learning recovery coordinator that is our guidance counselor. We really need that now. The kids aren't going out on, as close contacts and all that when the COVID thing was, like a lead blanket over us. We have an additional clinician, and so we have a .2 that we kept from the region. So we have a full-timer, Mary Elizabeth, and then we have a .2 for the primary grades and the preschool pre-K, which is a totally different animal. This thing. That's so cute. We have educator wellness programs. We have some of them meeting tomorrow. We have the educator peer support model, funding from Van Buren Foundation, and that has been an incredible success. The teachers are loving it. We have workout Wednesdays that started about a month ago. Next week is Wellness Week, and there are so many things going on. My goodness. Business managers yep, I know, this is sending the bills. And most of all, we have a community and a school community cheering us on. This is everything. This is everything. The fact that we feel supported. Everyone works so hard in a small district. It's small, so we all wear a lot of different hats. I never thought I'd be the head of a water system, particularly great at it. Thank God, Chris Osborne, Jr. But it is in my name, and so that's just one example of one of us wearing a hat that you wouldn't wear in a larger district, a larger municipality. And so this committee makes it worthwhile. And I can't thank you enough for your support. And you're the reason why those first three slides exist.
You guys are the people in the.
You couldn't do the work and do right by our families and children, especially in this complex 21st century age of, just so many issues that bubble up, just like pandemic, post-pandemic building, and just the reliance on technology and just the complexities of this century. We have to do right by these children. We have to ensure that their post high school pathways are set. We start in 6th grade with Zello. I meant to put that up here, where they do career exploration. They also do sort of a personal inventory of talents, affinities, hopes, and dreams for themselves. And so the proof is right here in front of me in terms of support. And I just want you to know that I'm grateful for being your superintendent most of the time. They say I'm part-time, I'm not quite sure. I do get a lot of time to skate some, but on behalf of the children in this community, not all families in this community are wealthy. This is a community of contrasts. But this school levels the playing field for every child of a year-round resident. And that is everything. And over here.
You're doing so well, why don't you just take the rest of it?
Thank you, Lori, and administration, Amy, certainly everybody that's in here day in, day out, the families that contribute, the teachers that show up every day, and the children that stay engaged. It's, as Lori said, the last 3 years, the trajectory we've been on is impressive. And to kind of echo, I didn't realize this, when you say, people are asking me, I didn't realize until I started to go to these chair meetings for every single time. I mean, I think there's two people. There's the people that are like, I can't believe you guys are doing unbelievable things down there. How are you doing it?
Oh.
And then there's this, we could never do that at our district.
Yes.
So it's like this balance of people are wanting to learn more, but then there's also this defeated mentality that they just know to implement something like IB or to become a 5-star school is just something that's so out of reach. They're just trying to get people to show up every day, have a community that's engaged, supported of the school. So we're really fortunate. And I will add one thing. I don't know, your ears must have been ringing this week. I've had 2 people that are not involved in school come up to me that are in tech and software and comment on Jonathan Gabriel. And before they waxed too poetic about you, I said, you're not scooping them, are you? They're like, no, I just want to let you know that you have somebody that is very, very capable in that seat. And as a resident, they feel very good that you're overseeing the technology of not only the school, but also the community. So I figured I would share that here today. These are things that I hadn't heard.
Awesome.
But now that I go into a room where other people, we're all trying to find a common goal, I do get this feedback. And I meet a teacher at least once a month that sings Jack McKinnon's praises.
Amazing.
You're so lucky to have him.
Mhm.
We loved him when we did. I wish I could go be with him again, but travel, distance, these types of things don't work out. So nonetheless, thank you for everything you do. And I don't want to take too much of your thunder away. I know you do a lot for us as well. So I'll let you do your thing.
Yeah.
Of course.
Widen the doors so Johnny can get to his one.
No.
Seeing 23, 24, we've had a little bit of a bump in that enrollment. Just to break down by class to 23. The high school, this one had, as you can see in 23, when we went to the new tuition regime, had a reduction in the number of students at the high school, which helped us out budget-wise. 24, we're looking at 82, what we have budget, and that's going to be our actual for this year on the enrollment. It's the bad news. Our state aid continues to go down. We've lost about $100,000 from FY22 to FY25. I think at this point it will bottom out at 334.8. There was a computation that the governor used for the state aid formula this year, which was different from what he had used in the past, which basically reduced the overall state aid by over $25 million. So districts are starting to contact legislators about this. Not sure what the impact would be on us. It probably wouldn't be much more than 6,000, but for example, in Lincoln, it's about $400,000 of my state aid, but there are a lot of communities that if the computation had been at the same formula that it was last year, it would have been about $25 million more in state aid. So so we're looking at a budget for 25 of $8,050,425, which is an increase of 234,478, which is a 3% increase over the prior year. Excuse me, this is a town appropriation, not the budget. So under state law, school committees cannot propose a budget increase in the town appropriation more than 4%. So that is the cap. As you can see, that we've been below that cap for the last 4 years, and we're proposing to be below it this year as well, too. So this is the total expenditure. We got $8,571,725, which is an increase of 2.63%. We do have certain contracts that are still in play as far as the teachers. Non-certified is going to be renegotiated. So we're not seeing as significant an increase in expenses as some other districts are seeing at this point in time, but I think 2.63 is consistent with where we were last year in terms of the increase in expenses. So on the revenue side, we're seeing a decrease in state aid of 27,526. We are seeing the same number of out-of-district tuition students that we're projecting for 24. We did budget somewhat less than that in 24. So we, I think, almost doubled our budget from 24.
Yes.
So we are anticipating 18 out-of-district students at 6,000 per, and 7 pre-K students at 2,700 per annum. The increase in the town appropriation would yield 234,478 at the 3%. And what I do have factored in here is an anticipated distribution from the DuPage County Regional Special Education Program of another $50,000. If you recall, in the 24 budget, I had $100,000 in revenue. Hopefully, we'll see that before the end of June. And I'm anticipating that final distributions would probably occur in the third quarter of 24 or fourth quarter of 24, which would be another $50,000 on the closeout. So I've included that in the revenue number in anticipating that we will be getting that distribution. Needs to be sufficient cash. There are a couple of operational items I guess they're dealing with now, so hopefully we can get an update for the committee on where that stands over the next couple of months.
Fingers crossed.
On salaries and wages, we basically have an increase of 1.4 FTEs as a result of bringing in student services into the district. Although we do have funding of IDEA that we use to offset funding for the DuPage County Regional last year. So we transferred some additional FTEs over to that grant. So the net impact on the unrestricted general fund has been a net of 0 as a result of that. Certified bargaining unit contract has a 2% increase for teachers. Non-certified, again, we've got a placeholder in there as we negotiate that contract. Administrative salaries are based on current contracts in place. Some teacher costs right now, looking at a daily rate of $140, maybe a little bit of an increase in that if we're having issues getting subs, but at this point, we're projecting at 140. And we've got teacher pay coverages in there of $40 and $50 per class based on changes in the teacher's contract. Fringe benefits, health and dental is provided through the Allen Interlocal Trust. Generally, those rates will come to us sometime in April. At this point, I'm using the rates that the town has put into their budget, which are calling for a 5% increase in health and a 3% increase in dental. I'm hoping that we can probably do better than that, but at this point, I'm being consistent with what the town is using. Our co-shares are going to probably stay the same based on the contracts. We have 20% for teachers and 18% for non-certified and admin. We have a decrease in the pension contribution for teachers. It was, I believe, 1504 last year, down to 14.44 this year, so a little bit of a savings there. And we'll see general increases in payroll taxes, defined contribution pension that are based on salaries, with increases in salaries as a result of salary increases and step increases. So you'll see an increase in those fringe benefits. Tuition, we're looking at a total of 84 students that would be taking grade 8 based on the current enrollment, and taking grade 12 out. That would give us the 84, and that's our tuition based on the contract that we have in place, 15.5. Seeing a little bit, we're projecting a little bit of an increase in our out-of-district placements for special education. I believe last year we were budgeting around 75,000. We have 125 this year. Interesting to note in special education out-of-district placements, there's virtually no positions available for students in the state right now. I know in Lincoln, we had gone up from October of 2022 to current, almost 300% in our out-of-district placements. And I think what we're seeing, and Mike, you might be able to know a little bit better than me, I think the impact of the pandemic now, we're seeing these kids that are probably in that 4th grade and up, that didn't get the services during the pandemic, are now creating a need. So like in Lincoln, we're seeing an increase in the number of students coming in, but we're seeing an increase in the needs as well. So they're going to be more costly as they continue.
Especially speech language, OT, PT.
Vocational ed, we have 3 part-time and 1 full-time at Newport Career and Tech, a tuition cost of 15.5. So these are students that, if they had matriculated to the high school, we would have them at the high school. So they really need to be included probably in our enrollment when we're looking at our total enrollment for high schoolers. And we have 2 students that are going to the Met, their CTE program, and you notice that tuition is $24,615, which is the tuition that's set by the state of Rhode Island, by RIDE, I should say. So that's a little bit costlier for us, the state school.
But it is a good fit for those children.
Definitely.
Busing costs, we're in year 4 of a 5-year contract. We're looking at a 3% increase, which is it's a pretty decent increase relative to where contracts are now. We run 6 buses plus a midday pre-K run, 1 late bus. There are some additional costs that we'll take into consideration for fuel surcharges, and of course our athletic and extracurricular events. Those have been sometimes difficult to get busing for, so we've seen a little bit of an increase in the cost of the buses for those events. Bus monitors, which is a requirement on all K through 5 transportation. We're looking at about 2,900 hours of usage in FY25, and at the contract rate of $29.66.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
So John, on this particular thing about busing, how much have we saved in the amount of times that we have not been supplied a bus over the past year due to the shortage of bus drivers?
There is.
We adjust it on the invoice.
I'd have to look at the contract in terms of, I mean, it's good, the billing in terms of the number of days that we didn't pay, because you pay for a daily rate for a bus.
Right.
They're not providing that bus, obviously, we're not gonna get billed for that bus.
It just seems like we're getting more and more notices that buses are being combined and we don't have the buses that we're supposed to have. So I'm just curious to where that is in comparison to the budget that was allocated.
Well, we do this based on 100, was it a 181 or 182? So we use that on the full contract year for the buses, but in the event that they're not able to supply buses, then they will adjust their billing
They do.
for the buses.
I'm gonna try to
But
find,
this, obviously, this is based on the full
they had
number of days in the education.
They had 2 drivers in the East Bay die in December. But they do adjust,
So the utility costs, fuel oil, we're seeing a little bit of a decrease in the cost of fuel oil, run around 15,000 gallons per year. Electricity, what I have in there is a little bit of electric costs, plus the cost of the lights that we put in. We have a 5-year contract to pay off the lights that we put in. And that, I believe, is probably close to 19,000 per year. With the solar plus the virtual net metering agreement that we do have, that's hopefully going to be in place soon, we probably could see a savings of a net zero on the electric costs here. So we do have maybe a little bit sitting in that electricity account at this point, but I just want to make sure that we get the necessary numbers out of that, so out of both the virtual net metering and the solar. Solar sometimes can be difficult on the startup, so in the event that it gets set up, but it's not up and operational until September, October, should have enough to cover any of the electric costs in there. And we have some propane that we work with for hot water heating. Curriculum supplies, we'll see a little bit of an increase in those, not only because of inflation, but we also have some additional special education supplies that will be included in there. All the others are fairly consistent with the prior years, so we're looking at an overall increase in curriculum supplies of about 11.5 the current year for FY25, I should say. Capital outlays, I don't know if you want to talk about these, Jen.
So just in the what? Nothing changed since last time, but not too much of a change from last year, with the one big obvious exception of Chromebooks. As we talked about a little bit last time, we normally try to do standardized on the model of going with a complete refresh of the entire Chromebook fleet at once. Besides the obvious benefits of everybody standardizing on the same model and being able to subsequently standardize things like classroom connections, charging cables, all that kind of stuff, software deployed to the machines, it makes it much easier in terms of replacement, repair. That way we can just hand any child an available device from our pool of devices without needing to worry about a different adapter to plug in a different room or setting it up a certain way. Everything is ready to go for every person at every time, and they are already familiar with that device, except for maybe the little miss kids here. but they get familiar very quickly. Other than that, there's a couple minor updates, refreshes to some machines, mostly on the admin and main office side. So a mobile charging solution that would actually allow for a couple of like pod style batteries that could be checked out and brought to different areas. So like it could be placed in the middle of a classroom for one or more students to connect to in the event of a dead battery, rather than fishing that cable between desks and feet all the way across the room. Some upgrades to the media center were also included in there, and all of that is offset by the REAP grant. And what actually I haven't gotten the actual numbers back yet, but I did start to get quotes from buyback, like tech recycling companies who give you money for devices that still have value. So when we're finished with our fleet, they will reuse, resell, or recycle them properly and pay us for whatever value is left out of those machines. So we'd expect at least another like $15,000-ish between the technology we have available to recycle. That's it. I think that's the last slide too, right? Thanks for coming.
Question on that. The Chromebooks, is that for all the students in the school? That covers everybody.
Every person.
One fell swoop.
So the staff do get a more upgraded model than the students do. A bigger screen, a more responsive processor, handle multitasking a little bit better, because from time to time we still do have people that are trying to do a PowerPoint while running a so other content for class. Teachers have a device more appropriate for the head of the classroom. Students have a very student-centric device. Again, one standardized across grade levels that they touch screen and pull up into a tab that still has the backpad, all the physical inputs you would need that you wouldn't necessarily get on like a tablet device, tablet only device. And yeah, that's worked really well for us so far. Our last refresh was right at the start of COVID, and we were coming off of a fleet of devices, I think, that we were stretching out for like 4 to 5 years of use. So you really start to feel the slowdown. We also didn't get nearly as much buyback value out of those devices because we had waited so long. There wasn't many people willing to do anything with them other than recycle them. Yeah, I mean, we've heard great things about it being easier as kids transition between grade levels, having that same tool that's already familiar to them. Likewise, the teachers, now that they're on the same software platform as the students, don't have to go through as much work to kind of translate between what it looks like on their screen and what it would look like for the students, I guess is the easiest way to explain that. Whereas before, things were very mismatched, and that could lead to some inconsistencies between delivery of instruction as well.
What grades are the Chromebooks in? Is it 1 through 8, 5 through 4 through 8? What is it?
It's across all grade levels, pre-K through 8. Not that obviously the pre-K grades take them home or rely on them heavily as an instructional tool. They have a slightly different model where they have some available in the room to use occasionally as appropriate, but they are more in charge of their own usage. Once you get into first grade and above, then each student is assigned their own specific device, which also encourages a sense of ownership. They treat them a little bit better because they know that's their device and they'll be getting it back year after year until the device refresh happens.
John, I do have just a couple questions.
Sure.
In terms of, and maybe Lori and Mark, you're here, you could also comment on this. In terms of the special education needs throughout the state and the scarcity of the resources available to the students that have the need, if we were to be faced with a student that we couldn't provide the need for, the services for, what do our options now become in terms of where would they go? And then moreover, what does that cost look like? Because it doesn't sound like we could just send them to the closest district, as that might not be an option based on what you kind of shared with what's happening with Lincoln and what you're seeing across the state.
So, Rhode Island Department of Ed, in their infinite wisdom, and I think the Supreme Court, has ruled on this in terms of decisions. You've got a student that DCYF places in a residential setting out of state, which is what we have in Lincoln. we're on the hook for that number for an out-of-state district placement.
Okay.
And you would say that, and we tried to push back and say that we'll pay for the educational portion of it, because basically that's what would be our obligation if they were in-state. But I believe, and Sean could speak to that more, that there's a decision that the courts have come down with saying that the district is obligated for the total cost
That's correct.
of that, which includes not only the educational portion for the 5 days, but the residential portion for that student.
Okay.
That could be 6-figure.
Oh, that's why I'm asking, because if there's such a shortage in terms of resources to send them, where would they then need to go? And what does that cost look like? And if you're saying that you've run into a similar situation in Lincoln where it has to go across state borders and it's actually
Well, you try.
residency, if you will.
You try to keep them in the least restrictive environment. So you try to keep them in the classroom, but in the event that you do not have a program for that particular student, you can look at other districts that may have programs that would be available where you can place that student. But when you're talking about out-of-district placements and, we had one situation in Lincoln, a family of 4 children came in, all 4 of them had IEPs and one had an out-of-district placement. And that's like on one day you have this change. It just happens overnight.
Time.
So, you integrate certainly as much as you can within the district. But in the event that you don't have the programs and you can't place them in out-of-district, you may search on other districts to see if they have programs.
Yeah.
You can send the child to, which then you're going to be on the hook for the out-of-district busing for those students, of course. In our case in Lincoln, we had probably a $1 million increase in our out-of-district tuition over our budget. But then you looked at the out-of-district transportation, there was another $700,000 in transportation. Our RIDE would enter into agreements to do the out-of-district transportation, generally through First Student. And, you get a pro rata share of that bus for those children that are on that bus, depending on which placement they're going to, but it's a significant number.
Well, that rolls right into my second question on scarcity. To kind of echo Michael's concern, can you share a little bit more about this bus situation? And I know it's not just unique to Rhode Island. It seems to be something that's consistent across the country in terms of finding support staff to get our children to and from the school. And it sounds to me like it's going to be something that continues to compound as our staff ages out. I just don't really know what the solution is to this. And I'm wondering if there is any discussions at the RIDE level as to how we ensure that doesn't break. And we're not going to like, oh, well, it's one bus for the town of Little Compton and the first kid gets on and it's a 2-hour ride because we don't have any drivers. So I'm wondering, like, is there anything in place or?
Well, I don't think it'll get to that point. In our particular case, because we're working with First Student out of the Tiverton location, we're able to get to certain economies of scale by sharing some of those costs.
Great to know.
Some of the
So
ones, yeah.
we're able to get as effective a contract as we can for a district our size. It's not big. I mean, there are not many districts that do their own busing anymore. I mean, there are some, I think Cranston does some of their busing, but it's really not cost effective when you're looking at, cost of equipment, you're looking at insurance, maintaining these buses and things of that nature. So, but I think First Student is done. We use them in Lincoln as well. And I think they do as good a job as you can expect. I mean, they seem to be doing no better, reactive to our, concerns if we have issues.
Very much, and they've definitely stepped up in terms of wages. They're well past market rate, unlike other vendors that we deal with, like Chartwells, et cetera. So that's a problem with them and the turnover. So as you could see, the monitors are paid, a great hourly wage, and so are the drivers. Like,
Well, they don't get that money. They go to the
right,
festival.
right. But yeah, so, but the drivers are in the upper 20s, the monitors a bit lower. And I think the reciprocity in terms of CDL licensing, that has helped a little bit. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. And now there are issues with not enough people to actually test those want the CDL credential. So it's a human resource
Disaster is what it is.
supply chain issue, you know? And with the 2 deaths in the East Bay, 2 drivers, that did not help.
I think Amazon has been taking bus drivers as well too. I think that's probably slowed a little bit now too. But
First student is paying for the credentialing. The DMVs are not keeping up with, in a timely manner with the exams. It's a whole hornet's nest of issues. Hopefully, next year will be better.
And then my final question for you, John, you did tag in, I know we're doing the contract negotiations with the non-union.
We're meeting next week.
Correct, but that being said, you earmarked a percentage increase or?
yeah, I have a placeholder in that for that number. So
Okay. All right. Questions, please.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to talk to John earlier. And one of my, I won't say concerns, but one of the things that, one of my questions was that last year, FYE '24, we had a surplus of $114,000 left over.
that was 23, Mike.
23?
Yep.
So what would, oh, because it's not.
So this year we're going to have a small deficit, right? The 60.
23. So, and we talked about what's in the capital outlay. And it was 288 for that.
Yeah, there's 288. We have a couple of payments that we've made on the solar. We had transferred the year before 303,000 into that account. And we wound up spending about 15 and change for 2 payments for the solar so far. So that leaves around 288 in that.
288 in that, and then the report said that we 704.
Yeah, the audit report finally is going to be issued. I have a draft here. We've been reviewing it this week. So our ending fund balance on the unrestricted fund will be 704,431. But that doesn't include the 300,000 that we voted on, and I believe it was the September meeting to transfer over the capital. So that number would be coming down from 704 by the 300,000. And then I was waiting for this report to come out before I came back and asked for the additional 100 because we were looking at 4. So that would then take that down to about 304. We're looking at a loss. I think my projections are looking around $60,000 for FY24. So you would then take the 304 down by about 60. So let's say you're at 250 in terms of accumulated surplus. 250 would represent somewhere around 2 or 3% of your overall revenue,
Correct.
Which I think is a realistic reserve to have to cover any unusual expenses that may come up, such as
Out of district.
right.
One day.
So I think in the past, what the budget committee has looked at is looking at that unrestricted surplus accumulated being no more than that 200,000 to 300,000 in that range. I think Joe Quinn had pointed that out to me at one budget meeting that we had.
I mean, I guess.
We do have that other capital reserve, and Mike and I did talk about that. So we have in there the 288, which will add the 300, give us 588 plus another 100, 688. We have 550 that we're looking for roughly on the solar. On that, we'll be getting some monies back from RIDE, and we also have 185,000 coming in from the town to fund that too. So, but we needed to front that money to get
Yeah.
everything going. So, and in order to get housing aid from a RIDE in the state of Rhode Island, you have to have a separate fund set up, and that's why we set up the separate capital reserve fund.
Right.
That we can then utilize that as a kind of an ongoing fund that we can use for capital.
Expenditures, exactly.
And so at the end of the day, we're talking that we have the 704 plus the 288. And I understand they're in different accounts.
Right.
But that's what our surplus is at the end of the day, is the 704 plus the 288.
That would be our accumulated surplus, including the capital reserve. So the unrestricted portion of it. When, for example, when the bond rating agencies are looking, and that's another item that came up, and I don't believe the committee's been informed yet, but we're looking at refunding the school bonds. So we had a meeting last week with the financial advisors for the town. I sat in on that meeting. It looks like we're gonna wind up saving about $60,000 per year in debt service expense. So
Well, hello.
kind of refinancing.
So they came to us and were like, we need to restructure this bond. How did this go down?
Well, we had talked to them in the past, and the bond had a call option that didn't come into play until after 10 years after the bonds were issued. So if you recall, that was, the bonds were issued sometime in, I believe, December of 13 or early 14. So now we're in a position where we could do a call on the bonds and do a refunding or refinancing on it. And rates are at a level now that it would wind up being some savings. Now, we may have to split that savings with RIDE because they pay for a portion of the debt service. Either way, there'll be some savings there too, so.
And what does that amortize over the remainder of the bond? Correct, and that is for what, another 10 years?
Yeah, that bond, I believe, I don't know if it was 20 or 25, yeah, I believe it was 20 years, so
2030.
do a remaining 10 years, and we would see roughly a $600,000 savings over the 10-year period on the debt service.
That doesn't affect our budget directly, though.
No, it affects the town's budget.
Town's budget.
Because they built that already into their, their tax issues, I mean, their tax revenues, so. But when you look at the two, you're right, we have almost $1 million.
Yeah, so it's 992,000, which would include that 114,000, I would imagine, that carried over from FYE '23.
Well, so last year, in FY '23, we came over in FY '20. Yeah, so FY '22, we had an opening fund balance, I believe, of 590.
590, 117.
Right. So we add the 114, that gets us to 704. So the 114 that we made this year is added to the 590 to get to the 704. So that's included in that 704.
So I would like to see the 114 applied to this year's budget going forward. If that carry over that 114 to apply it to the budget that we're proposing right now. So instead of your increase of 236,000 approximately, we apply that 114,000 to it. We still have other money going forward. And I understand John and I had this discussion, and I understand that he wants to make sure that we have plenty of money. We're in a good financial standpoint. We want to make sure that we can maintain the services that we have, and we want to make sure that we can pay for the the current capital outlay of the solar panels going forward.
Mhm.
With the idea that we're gonna be receiving 40% of the money that we outlay for the solar project. So, I'm just trying to,
So you're at like nine, almost, let's call it 1 million. We need 550 for the solar project, even though we're going to be reimbursed on a portion of that. And then another 114, as Michael's saying. So would we carry anything? What is our cap? I mean, what does his proposal even look like?
So that would wind up taking what I would look at as my unrestricted accumulated surplus. We'd probably cut that in half. So if we were at 250, it would certainly reduce it to 100 and some odd thousand. My sense is that certain members of the budget committee would like to level fund us again this year. There's no question.
Well, that was not the sentiment at last night's meeting, I will be the first to say. That wasn't the sentiment that Tony carried or President Mushin when they made their presentation.
That's not the budget committee.
Fair, that it was in front of the budget committee though. And I mean, I chimed in on where I thought we would be. It was below what Bob's anticipation was. Everybody seemed to be very pleased with that.
That's the sense I get.
That's pretty disappointing.
The level funding, does that disqualify us from all of the benefits of the housing aid from RIDE?
No, it doesn't impact it. It's just, we just have to make sure that on our unrestricted budget, that we're monitoring that closely. And if we have any unusual, for example, in FY24, I've got $100,000 that I've got in there for monies coming to us from Newport County Regionals. In the event that we don't see that money, because
Got to get this guy involved for sure.
Sean's not doing his job,
Nice.
There.
Sorry, Sean.
Wow. We wouldn't, but that's 61,000 becomes 161,000.
Correct.
And then may put us in a position that if we have, obviously, if you have you could always go in and take what's been transferred into the capital reserve because it's not externally restricted. It's restricted and transferred by the school committee. You could always free up that money and transfer it back in order to meet a deficit reduction plan. Because if you have a deficit, you have to have a plan to remediate that deficit, and that's what the Auditor General would require when you have a deficit. So, there are ways that we can do it. I think, from Mike's standpoint, I think what he's saying is are we saying to the budget committee that, okay, we're going to give you some of that back based on what we've earned in the past. And you got to remember that some of this has come in through the Newport County Regional, so it's not monies that we necessarily made in excess of the budget. But it is monies that have been accumulated at the collaborative that are now coming back to the district. So, I think there are ways that we can deal with it. I mean, it's.
Please.
Questions, less comment. I just think in a year where we've had to take on an in-house special ed program, and we aren't seeing a drastic increase to the budget, we've done that, as we've stated in every meeting since we've done that. Basically, it's been virtually net zero on the budget to bring this in-house, net zero to have almost 1.5 full-time employees in the district. We've talked here tonight about how special ed, especially in this state, is lacking in terms of support. We've heard about the out-of-district costs, and to want to reduce what our financial advisor says is a realistic reserve, 250,000 by half, I think is dangerous in a time when we're seeing the needs of children just rise exponentially. I think it's disappointing after last year's town financial meeting where the town of Little Compton unequivocally voted to fund the school. I think it's disappointing that there's members of any town committee this year that feel that they want to lower any funding to this school. So I guess I don't have a question, it's just my comment.
I can just follow up on that, is that I'm not asking to lower funding. I'm just saying that we had funding left over from a previous year to apply it to this year.
That would lower our savings account, is what you want to do.
We have $992,000.
No.
We won't, though. Did you listen to all of the math that John did?
I did, and I've actually sat down with John prior to this meeting and I went over it with him. Yes,
So
I
I'm confused
understand.
as how you're still confused in getting the $1 million number.
I'm not confused. I'm not confused at all. I understand this quite well. The other part is that I have not heard the message that John is relaying to us tonight either. So we have not voted on a budget. We have not submitted a budget. So I'm not sure why we would be saying that we're going to be level funded when we haven't even presented anything to the budget committee. So I don't think we should be creating accusations or saying anything. I think we should basically decide on this. I just noticed that if we have excess, why don't we plan it to the next budget? That's all I'm saying. I'm not asking to reduce services. I'm not asking to reduce teachers or students or anything. It's maintaining the level of service. It's just on how you pay for it. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking to change anything. John and Laurie have sat down and created a budget. I'm not going against it. I'm not bucking their budget. I'm just saying that we had some. Now, and if we came back and John said, all we have is 300,000, I wouldn't even have said anything. You know what I mean? I would have said, we can't run things too tight.
Correct.
And I understand that because of the variables. We've had the discussions with John as far as special ed that could come in, we could get people in. I get all of that, but at the same time, I don't feel like we're running that tight that we can't move that money from 114 into this budget. And if what John's saying is what he's hearing in the backdrop is accurate, then this is a good faith effort upon us that going forward. Now, again, I don't know any of what's going on in the background, but I'm just saying, when I look at this, because this is really, because I wasn't able to have come on the 14th and I started reviewing the numbers and what have you, this is what I see. This is what jumps out to me. That's all this is. I'm not asking to change how the school's running.
I didn't accuse you of doing that. I said that
You said the committee.
No, please let me.
Please, everybody. just-
Please let me finish my statement. What I said was, your solution, your suggestion, as John has stated, would reduce his calculated reserve of $250,000 to about $100,000.
Our rainy
And all
day
I
fund.
said is I'm not comfortable with the state of special education in the state of Rhode Island right now with only having $100,000 in that reserve. And I understand that you think it's $1 million, but I think we're just gonna have to agree to disagree on this one. I wasn't saying anything about what you want to do to the school. I just think we should have a larger number in there.
So
Chair, can I
please,
just-
Megan, go ahead.
I first hear a lot of good things, like I'm super happy that you don't want any, I think that we're all on the same page. We don't want to lose services.
Correct.
You see an idea where we can carry forward some of the money and like, honestly, if we had more years under our belt with the special education program, I feel like I would, support that statement a little bit more. I see how we have done that even where I work, that, you can carry funds over to support. But I do think it's really early to do that, considering how early we are into the early education program that we have here and the increased number of students and the needs. So I don't see that is like a bad suggestion.
No, it's
If
great.
But I just think that right now it doesn't make me comfortable because of how new this program is to the school, and already the needs are so, you know, there's so many services, there's so little staff, and so, you know, I see where everyone's coming from, and I think that we're all in like a good place here where we want to see everything maintained. That's like Lori's slideshow shows that what we're doing is working. I mean, that's very clear. And I hear definitely what you're saying. I just, for me, it's because it's so early into developing this program. It would make me nervous not
Fair.
having the
That's kinda
extra.
Sue, do you have anything to add?
If I may, our out-of-district placement numbers doubled this year.
The other thing with the budget is we don't put any capital in the budget, so we don't put any long-term capital. So when we look at the budget, we're not putting $150,000 or $200,000 in there to kind of put aside for some long-term capital. So we have monies that were coming out of the Port County Regional that we decided we were going to put in there so that we could do not only the solar, but we also have, you know, the gym project that we're doing, but we also looked at moving away from fossil fuel now that we would have the electricity cost covered with the solar, is thinking about going to, you know, mini splits here and moving to electricity as a form of producing heat and air conditioning. When you look at the water in this town, it does a number on the boilers and the water heaters and everything else. So we've got to kind of look at that as well too. So, and you find with most districts, when they have a certain amount of money that's sitting in an accumulated surplus, then again, the bond rating agencies will look at that. And for a town, if you're in a 12 to 15% range, which like Little Compton would be in, you're AAA rated. So you get the highest rate bond rating. So you wind up having savings in terms of your overall interest costs. But oftentimes when, for example, in one of the communities, the charter calls for no more than 8%. Well, if you go over that 8%, it gets transferred to a capital account, both for capital and for open spaces. So it's a way that most communities will utilize funding for capital without having to impact the tax rate on a regular basis.
If I may, we are in the middle of our capital improvement plan. We've reapportioned the art room, and now we have a STEM room and an art room. Our gymatorium project was $250,000. And there's another piece to that we didn't, the reimagining the library, the connector road in front of the building, or the parking lot. That's work that is delayed because the state will be redoing the commons. And so we don't want to be cutting curb and everything else when they're doing that. So the town asked us to hold off on our component of that new parking lot and accessing it. Of course, we want to add air conditioning to select areas, especially the middle school turns into a sauna at the end of the school year, beginning of the school year. So we have capital improvement projects laid out. We have deferred maintenance issues that we are rectifying, and obviously educational enhancements. They all take capital. And so we don't budget for that. And when we have reserves, that's what we pull it from. And, you know, we want to replace select exterior doors and fob some more, and we don't budget for that. So we have as you know, you're all familiar with our stage 2 that, you know, ad nauseum that we've talked about. We've gone before the town council, they've approved all the projects. And the funding is our overage. Emily.
You know, I want to thank Michael for, you know, you're very diligent, Michael. You did your work. You brought a thoughtful approach to how we can construct the budget and show the taxpayers that we're being proactive. That being said, as somebody that I agree with you, I like where your head's at with that, like I said, proactive approach. Unfortunately, we do the budget before June and not after September 1st. So I'm really anxious, as Megan would kind of alluded to, as Hannah highlighted. What does our school year look like with the implementation of IB, with the needs that have started to be documented throughout the state of special education? And can we provide those services here, or are those students in fact going to need to go out of district? And I mean, we're not talking about like, oh, a kid has to go out of district. It's a couple $1,000s. It could be $100,000 before we blink. And that to me is scary when I know that we only have $200,000 or even $300,000 in the kitty. And 1, 2, 5 students could completely disrupt that number and our abilities to act responsibly for things that occur, as Lori said, the day-to-day that you're not really budgeting for, and then the water heater goes. Or
That just happened recently. It was under warranty. It was one of our.
I was gonna say, we just replaced this thing. What are you talking? So those kind of things, that scares me. But Michael, I do want to thank you for being thoughtful in
Same student.
kind of looking, how can we manage these things? I also want to, John, if you could, this idea that there's $1 million, it's not really, we don't have access to $1 million. We have an access to monies for projects. And then we have an account that we basically carry.
But we got monies committed for capital that's sitting in a separate account, so it's not included in our unrestricted
Correct.
numbers. So we can't, basically the way we did it by putting it there, we didn't want to use it for operations because we know we have the need for the capital. So that's why we set that aside.
Yes.
And RIDE requires that to be set aside in order for us to get housing aid. So, I mean, that's the reason we did that. We did it that way when we did the hardening of the front entrance.
Same thing.
Set that capital reserve fund up, we put the money in there,
Did the work, got reimbursed,
kept it reimbursed, and
Main entrance used to be totally different. It wasn't.
well, I remember, yeah.
But I guess at the end of the day, though, John, if you go look at the accounts, it's $992,000. And I understand they're in 2 different accounts. We had that discussion. One's in capital and one is unrestricted.
municipal accounting, Mike, you look at this financial statements, and these are just like unbelievable. I defy anybody to read them, to be honest with you, but
I mean,
but the reality is they put things in different buckets for a reason. And the town does it just like the school does it.
Correct.
But when we're looking at the town's unrestricted surplus, we're focusing in on their 3.2 million. We're not focusing in on some of the other monies that they have in capital or some of the other reserves. So it shouldn't be any different than what the town is. So
Yeah, but that's, the question was, even if you want to look at it in buckets, you want to look at different accounts, at the end of the day, however many buckets you want to have, all those buckets equal up to that amount of money. That's my,
But it doesn't, because some buckets you get 40% back on the dollar, and other buckets are dollar for dollar.
no, I mean, but like for right now, we're not talking about having to expend the money for the, so I'm saying like as of
But
right
this
now,
budget isn't for right now. It's for the fiscal year of
Next year.
2025.
I'm talking about where it stands right now. Where it stands right now is 992.
Does that, so do you have any questions, discussion?
No, I want to tell Megan, I don't want you to worry about the special eds. I mean, I understand it. I've dealt with that, but any program is only as good as the person that has been hired to do it. So if they're not great, then doesn't matter how much money we have to put into it, you know, the kids will suffer. So we just have to make sure that whoever that person is that has been hired to do that, that you keep a watchful eye, that they're good at what they do. That's
But
all.
Sue, we're not
And
talking about
follow
people,
through.
we're talking about money. We're
Yeah.
talking about sending students out of district when they can't stay here.
I
That it costs us
understand, I
money.
understand what you're saying. I'm not talking about, I'm talking as a
Megan's
mother
concerned about the
to,
money.
Yeah, we're
Hannah, you missed it.
concerned about.
it's okay.
No, listen, I understand what you're saying, Sue, but we're concerned that if a child's need can't be met here and they need to go out of district, the cost to our district could be $25, $50,
I
$100,000 for one
understand that.
student.
I
So that's
wasn't,
what.
I wasn't, I understand that. You said you have a comment or
Oh.
do you have a question?
Well,
And my
pertaining to
co-
the,
Right, and my thing was, you could have a bazillion dollars and a crappy person running it, and you wasted your money. So I'm saying, all I'm talking about is the personnel is important. That's what I'm saying.
correct.
To me, that's more important.
Yeah,
Spending it on a
I hear what
Great
you are
human
saying.
being than saying, we need to have all the bells and whistles, and if we have a kid who has to go out of state, that might cost a bazillion money. Well, yeah, it might cost something, but they might stink at what they do. That's all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
And there's other processes in place for accountability, and I can personally speak that I have 4 children that receives a variety of services within the school, and I work very closely with all of their special education. I've met multiple times with Mark, and personally, I think that everyone is supportive and doing a good job. So I think that we are very fortunate, and I definitely appreciate the staff that we have here in our special education services.
Okay. Any other final comments? I will take a motion to consider, to vote and approve the fiscal year 2024, 2025 school budget.
So moved.
I have a second. We will vote, roll call, Jennifer.
Travis Audi,
Aye.
Hannah Ayot,
Aye.
Megan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Susan Kinane,
Nay, I still have questions.
Okay.
Mike Rocha.
No.
Did you not want to answer them, ask them when I?
No, I like, takes me a while to think. You know what I mean? And
Fair.
I've gone over it, and I still have questions.
Okay. So the
Thank
reason,
you.
but the reason we voted tonight is because we have to present this to the
No, I
budget
know.
committee. Okay, I'm just making sure you realize we weren't like skirting the issue. We met tonight so we could get this done and they could get eyes on it. We'll then meet again with in front of the budget committee. You guys will make your presentation to the budget committee. We are more than welcome to attend. We will find out dates. I know the budget committee laid out a bunch of dates in which they are meeting in March and April. And I was also informed, we'll be able to attend, even though that might look as a quorum, because it's a public meeting, as long as we're not engaging and interacting with business, it should be okay, should you want to attend that meeting when John and Lori do their presentation. And then other than that, I will consider a motion to vote and, or to, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Will be a roll call.
Travis Audi,
Aye?
Hannah Ayot,
Aye.
Megan Gonzalez. Aye. Susan Kinane,
Aye.
Mike Rocha.
Thank you all. We will see you at the regular school committee meeting that takes place